Awesome. Hey, Dr. Moore, how are you?
Hey, doing great, thanks.
Good, good. Thank you for being here from Las Vegas, right? You're in Vegas right now?
I am, yeah. It's good to be with you.
Good to have you. Good to have you. So our third speaker is Dr. Jonathan Moore. Dr. Moore is the managing partner of the Cumberland Foot and Ankle Centers of Kentucky. And you can take it away, my friend.
Very good. Well, it's very nice to be with you, and it's an honor to be able to speak amongst some really high-quality speakers. And I think this is going to be a good follow-up from Dr. McGuire's previous talk. And what I'm going to try to do in this brief time that I have is try to convey some very practical practice management related pearls to you that I think may not only help, most importantly, take care of your diabetic patients and get the best outcomes, but we want the best outcomes, but we want to be smart in the way we practice. And so I hope I can give you in this period of time some tools, some pearls in order to help generate revenue in your practice and stay profitable. And as much as we want to help our patients, we have to do it smart. So my disclaimer is that I'm a consultant for Amerix and the designer of the More Balanced Patient Shoes. So we're going to be moving forward and talking about why we should be taking care of diabetic patients different. And you've already heard a lot of good information today. But from a practice management standpoint, these folks are going to be people that are going to be lifetime customers. These patients need our help and, of course, need to be in our offices often. So we need to create a patient experience for them that's outstanding. But these folks have chronic disease. They have unique risk factors. These obviously are at high risk. And how we do and how well we convey that our office is a center of excellence, I think is very important. We want to build trust. We want them to be buying into our recommendations and treatment protocols. And so how we convey ourselves as a practice and how we address these risk factors is really important. No matter whether you're seeing a wide variety of patients or just diabetic patients or whatever, identifying risk factors and treating those risk factors are key. And obviously these patients present unique practice management opportunities. And I'm just going to give you a small piece of those opportunities in this talk. So I think before I want to get started, I want to convey to you some interesting trends. And so a couple of years ago, a study was done that I want to share with you insofar as that it surveyed over 200,000 healthcare consumers. And in summary, what the study showed is that these folks want convenience and choice as the most important, issues for them in healthcare. So these patients that were surveyed, interestingly, spoke highly of the providers, but in many cases were negative about support staff, wait times and billing and insurance, which you would expect. It begs the question, how good is your support staff taking care of these patients, like diabetic patients that are in the office regularly? And so that's an important feature to point out. But when it comes to a patient experience, healthcare systems are aware that there's this increased emphasis needed towards patient experience. And we'll talk about what that means. But nearly half of organizations surveyed said that they plan to invest in technologies, tools, services to gauge patient experience metrics over the next year. So what do people want? So in this Health Markets Insight survey, 51% said that convenience and access to care were the most important factors in their decision making. So 51%. So when it comes to convenience, that's more than insurance coverage, doctor-nurse conduct, brand reputation, quality of care. So what does that mean for us? Well, first of all, it should point out to us the reason why these types of clinics you see in this picture, the Walmart clinics, the MIC clinics at CVS, those types of things. The reason why these types of retail clinics have grown 500% since 2006, 500%. So wouldn't it be nice to say that podiatric services and offices showed an increase in growth of over 500% over the next 10 years? Well, I think that, I don't know about 500%, but if we want to grow our practices and meet the needs of this unique patient population, we have to provide comprehensiveness, of course, excellent staff and service, customer service, but they want comprehensiveness and convenience. And so that's why, we in the practice management world and those that manage offices and manage large practices, we emphasize making sure that we provide as many services as we can to these patients, and we really cater our business to this clientele. So now that we've kind of laid that foundation of needing to make sure that we're comprehensive, we're providing that convenience because that's what patients want, let's look at some of the top diabetes management ancillary services that are oftentimes neglected by the physician. So many of these things, all of them are diabetes related, but many of these things have been mentioned in previous talks. Wound care, compression. In fact, Dr. McGuire just literally finished talking about the need for compression. I'm going to talk about that in a minute from a practice management standpoint. But in-office prophylactic surgery for patients that with just hammer digit deformity, some things we can do in our office, vascular testing, AFOs, addressing balance among diabetic patients, diabetic footwear, and of course, dermatological services. So when you think about these things, what I did is I did some research, and I want to convey to you something very interesting. So since January of 2020, Medicare has actually increased the amount it pays for diabetic shoes, quite a few wound care products, and many of the custom AFOs, including the Balance AFO. So the question is and on the screen, you can see some of the numbers and figures that demonstrate what I just said, but why is that? So, why is it that they're increasing the reimbursement for some of these services? Well, I'm going to tell you, number one, the cost of these patients ending up in hospitals or the cost of them getting wound care in a wound care center is enormous. So if you ask yourself where the most expensive place to get a digital surgery or foot surgery, it would be a surgery center, and it would certainly also be a hospital. When you ask yourself where the most expensive place to get wound care, without question, it's in a wound care center. And I'm not diminishing the value of wound care centers. There's a need for wound care centers, and among the doctors in our practice, we have some that spend time in a wound care center. But I believe that the payers are, in essence, incentivizing us to do more in the office that's appropriate. We've seen a dramatic decline in the number of patients number of podiatric doctors that are providing footwear. We see a pretty stark decline in AFOs because of same and similar, which I'll talk about in a minute. So at the same time as they're increasing these reimbursements, there's providing great opportunity for us to grow our revenues. They've also slipped in these challenges with audits, same and similar, these things that make it difficult. So if your practice isn't really prepared to deal with audits or deal with these compliance issues, this increase in reimbursement may not really calculate into revenue in your practice. So when it comes to services and wound care services and services related to our diabetic patients, what I did here is I provided basically a margin scale. And what's interesting is that if I would have done this 10 years ago, these numbers would have been different. But what I have here is a number of between 1 and 10, 10 basically having the best return on investment or best margin, and 1 being very little. Our practice has invested in MRI over the years. We have 3 MRIs amongst our practices. And I would say, 5 years ago, this would have been an 8 or 9. But reimbursement, cost of goods, cost of readings, all those types have increased. Reimbursements decline. So that's a, kind of a medium to marginal return. But if you look down at wound care supplies, that's a service that has stayed fairly consistently high at a 9 or 8 to 9 when it comes to margin or return on investment for these services. Ankle foot orthosis always is typically among the highest. X-ray services, of course, the reimbursements decline with that. Physical therapy, we have a physical therapy department in our practice that's a challenge more than ever because reimbursement for physical therapy services did nothing but decline. But when you look at these services, even diabetic footwear, even with its increase in reimbursement, it's still a very good margin. Not as high as wound care supplies, which we'll show you in a minute, and not as high as AFOs. But this should point to you the fact that there are opportunities to really grow your practice while really taking care of patients well. And so I hope this is helpful just to give you some sense of what we're talking about. So we talked about the fact that there are certainly opportunities for us in our practices to really grow and to see increased revenue. But what about the roadblocks? Well, I'm going to talk just for a couple of minutes about a roadblock that's affecting a lot of podiatric practices, and I could spend an hour talking about this, but I'm going to just highlight a couple things when it comes to AFOs in your practice. Now, you may be thinking, what do AFOs have to do with diabetes? Well, obviously, we've already talked about several important AFO products that are important for diabetic patients: crow walkers, offloading devices, and a host of others, including balance AFOs for diabetic patients. So there's a lot of AFOs that are geared towards diabetic patients. And with the advent of same and similar, we've seen, of course, some real challenges. And this is just an example of some of the types of AFOs that we use a lot with our diabetic patients. Patients that have had strokes, patients that have balance issues. This is a crow walker. And so, as I mentioned before, these products require, of course, someone to take a mold or cast or scan, but the margin of profit on these items is extremely good if you're doing it right, and of course, providing that excellent care to your patients. But what about same and similar? So, what is same and similar? So, if you don't know what same and similar is, that probably means that you don't do a lot of AFOs or DME, and that's fine. But for those that are doing pneumatic walking boots or over-the-counter ankle braces or AFOs of any type, you've probably seen this denial code called M3. And that means that device has been flagged as a same and similar. And of course, that Medicare dictates that AFOs or anything in that category can only be dispensed once per every 5 years. So the same and similar policy states that a beneficiary cannot get another AFO unless, and this is very important, the AFO has been lost, stolen, or irreparably damaged, or if the patient has a new diagnosis. So as an example, you can have a patient come in tomorrow that has a sprained ankle, and you put them in a pneumatic walking boot, and then next year they come in and they've torn their posterior tibial tendon and they require another walking boot or an AFO or any type of brace. It's going to be denied because of same and similar. So what do you need to do? How do you overcome this? I call same and similar, by the way, dumb and dumber. I think it's probably the most ridiculous Medicare program that exists. I know APMA is trying to do things to address this, but it is what it is. So what do you do? Number one, you need to enroll in your DME MAC carrier portal. Now, all of you that have DME numbers have a portal. Regions A and D, of course, have a particular portal. My CGS will only provide same and similar information for regions B and C, but find out where your portal is, enroll, and of course, when you see a patient where there's a question about same and similar, you put that patient's information in, and within seconds, you will get an indication whether that patient is a same and similar patient. So, what do you document if that patient is a same and similar? Of course, we see these all the time. So now it's important that if the issue is the device was stolen or lost or irreparably damaged, you're going to use a modifier that's the RA modifier, and then you're going to document very carefully, why this patient needs a new product, whether it be lost, stolen, irreparably damaged. Now, if it's not one of those, then what you're going to do is you're going to document what is different in this particular case. In some cases, it may be a change in anatomy. It may be that someone's lost a lot of weight and that AFO can't fit anymore. You simply document that in narrative. And in some cases, obviously, the conditions change. So if a properly documented progress note, including this above information, will most certainly win an appeal in a same and similar rejection. So this is a graphic showing you the variety of different types of AFOs that are amidst this or that are included in this same and similar issue. It's a lot of stuff, but you're going to use the portal, and you're going to make sure you use the portal to send all of your forms and information. It's much better to use the portal instead of a fax. So what's really important in your notes, if the patient's condition was different than the previous AFO dispensing, that can be a pneumatic walking boot or a cam walker, then you have to indicate that in the note. You need to make sure that you're documenting the patient's ambulatory. You need to make sure that the patient's that it's not just an issue of the brace wearing out. It has to be something there's a completely new diagnosis. There's a new condition, and in most cases, when the patient gets a pneumatic walking boot or an over-the-counter ankle brace, and then 2 years later they come in with a different condition. It's easy to document. And so, using that RA modifier, if the brace is broken, you're going to document, I inspected the L1902, the upright's cracked, no longer functional. This cannot be repaired. And obviously a new device is medically necessary. So those types of things will win an appeal in most cases. And finally, when you're using that RA modifier for the replacement of a product that's been lost, stolen, or damaged, you're going to, of course, have a narrative that explains the reason for the replacement. And you got to make sure that's there and it's clear and everything else. And whatever you can get to whether it be a police report or insurance report, which I never seem to be able to get, but whatever you can do to send along with that is very helpful. So if you have a need for a new product, and again, for instance, a patient may have an AFO, a simple AFO on one foot, on the right foot, and that patient the next year has a stroke and they require a new AFO that's a dorsey assist that goes up the back of the leg. That's something entirely different. You're going to need to document the patient's had a stroke, their functional level has changed, or their weight has changed, that the previous brace is no longer valid, it's no longer indicated, and so you're going to document that and send that through. Appeals we have a extremely high success rate with appeals, but what I would recommend is that if you know it's a same and similar patient with Medicare, and you know that there may be an issue of it being denied, you're going to have to send in an appeal, get an ABN and indicate on the ABN the same and similar issue, and of course the need for a new product. So again, you get an ABN, that's always helpful and advisable. So leaving same and similar, let's just highlight a couple of features, a couple of things that I think are valuable when it comes to just revitalizing your diabetes management program and what you can do to enhance, again, patient value, patient services. There's a lot of AFOs, different types of AFOs we use, and I'm going to highlight just a couple that I think are important when it comes to diabetes. Now, if you didn't know, of course, the rate of people falling amongst patients in our office is extremely high. We see amongst the highest, patient population demographics among people who fall. And so many times those patients are coming to us. They're there for something entirely different, and we need to be very good about addressing fall risk, identifying those that are at risk, and doing something. But there are numerous studies, this being one, that highlights the fact that patients with diabetes have a significantly higher incidence of falling. And some studies indicate a 3 to 7 times higher risk of falling. So, why are these patients falling that have diabetes? Well, you can guess. These patients have neuropathy, decreased sensory-motor function. Many times they have musculoskeletal or neuromuscular deficits, foot and body pain. All of these features are directly connected to lower extremity issues. And so if you don't think lower extremity pathology leads to falling, you've missed out on probably 20 years of good research. And when you look at podiatric involvement in clinics that address falls, this is a sad statistic, and that podiatrists are oftentimes not involved in addressing these risk factors for people that are at risk for falling. So we know these statistics. Every 20 minutes, an older adult dies from a fall. An older adult every second falls. And so falls cost $50 billion or more. And the question is, what can we do? And number one, we can do a simple fall risk assessment. Try to get these patients involved in their own care, making sure that they're wearing proper footwear. If they have significant instability in their foot and ankles, provide that AFO. And again, when you look at fall risk factors, many are related to the foot and ankle, and studies bear that out over and over again. The balanced AFO has been out for a long time. Obviously, there's lots of knockoffs. There's lots of companies that make them. But irregardless of where you get a product, as long as it has the correct features and that it addresses those proprioceptive issues, the postural control issues, what's most important is that we're providing that care for patients that need it. The MBB, the more balanced brace, has been PDAC approved for 3 codes, 1940, 2330, 2820. The reimbursement is very good. But what it takes is us really having the mindset that we need to address that in our patients. Lots of good studies. I'll just highlight a couple. The most recent. You may recognize a few people on this list, but this is a really good study, a systematic review looking at lower extremity risk factors for balance. If you are among the mindset that podiatrists shouldn't have a role in balance, this will convince you otherwise. And this study, of course, specifically looking at the balance AFO, published in Gerontology. These are good journals. These are good studies that highlight the value of AFOs for balance. And so what I do in my practice is that when we see a diabetic and we do a comprehensive diabetic foot exam, which I'll talk about in a minute, we include in our comprehensive diabetic foot exam information about fall risk. And we introduce them to a plan or program that can include, if indicated, an AFO, a proper shoe, and physical therapy. And of course, we have to be mindful of this issue. And again, this is an opportunity for us, for diabetic patients, to educate, make sure that our patients are aware that these not only are bad for a neuropathic foot, but also for fall risk. I want to show you a couple of different styles of AFOs that you may not have seen, and certainly maybe just provoke some interest. But this is an SMO that we use, that we incorporated a foot orthotic into. These are submalleolar orthotics that have the L codes L1907 and L2330. Reimbursement's phenomenal. In patients that can't tolerate something going up above their ankle, that need more midfoot, posterior tibial tendon control, these are excellent. Just highlighted this as a kind of a newer style of AFO that we're using a lot. Indications: sinus tarsi syndrome, perineal tendonitis, midfoot osteoarthritis. It's great for those cases where and just an orthosis by itself just really can't control the frontal plane deformity. And so these types of devices work really well. As we mentioned before, there's always going to be obstacles. There's going to be issues regarding staff, maybe not being able to cast or scan, lack of training, lack of protocols. But there are just massive opportunities in this world, as AFOs just simply have not declined in reimbursement. There's certainly, you've got challenges like same and similar. We have challenges in terms of technology to get that technology in our office to quickly scan these folks with really good casts and scans. But the technology is really advancing quickly to be able to scan these patients, get a three-dimensional scan of these patients for AFO use. A lot more of that technology that's going to be on the horizon. I'm going to switch gears to wound care and wound care supplies. And I'm going to stay, I'm going to stay neutral on products and just point out a few things. First of all, it is the case that, as I mentioned earlier, wound care products and supplies have really done nothing over the past few years, but just increase in reimbursement. And so I'm going to highlight some examples. I'm going to highlight the collagens. You see here in this graph. And by the way, a lot of the forms that I'm going to show you are going to be available to you just for download. I'll provide a little Q code for you to be able to download a lot of these forms like this one. So there's two codes I want to highlight. So A6021, which is a collagen matrix sheet like Permogram Prisma or the Helix, and then the 6010, which is a collagen powder. So you're allowed per Medicare LCDs to dispense 30 pieces or 30 grams per wound per month. These are cases. These are wounds that need to have some exudate. So you're going to document that there's minimal to moderate drainage. But if you look at the far right category, you can see that the reimbursement for these products is really extraordinary. And for instance, it costs about $10 to purchase a single collagen matrix sheet, or about $12 to cost for a gram of collagen, when the reimbursement per that gram is $35, almost $36, and the reimbursement for a collagen matrix sheet is $24. And the same is true for foam. There have always been margin built into these products. That's why it's very obvious why there's so many companies out there that come into your office and say, hey, please send us your wound care supply prescriptions, because they're the ones making this revenue. So I certainly want to come back to this, but let me just give you some examples of what I'm talking about. So this is an example of a collagen matrix sheet. Come in different sizes. Your cost is going to be probably around $10 a piece. You're going to be looking at, if you dispense a month's supply, and again, you don't always have to dispense a month's supply, but in some cases I do. In some cases I dispense a 2-week supply. And what we do is we use kits. So we just supply the patient with a kit with gauze, saline, and the collagen matrix. So if you dispense a month's supply to this one patient, that net profit, this is net, you're going to look at $425 for just, again, dispensing a month's supply of this product. So you take one of those patients a week, one collagen matrix patient a week over a year, that's an additional $22,000 to your bottom line in a year. What about collagen powder? You look at this product, it's about $12 a unit or gram. You're going to be looking at a reimbursement of close to $36. And then you're looking at a profit per unit about $23. So you multiply that times a month's supply, which you're allowed to dispense if indicated. You're looking at a net profit for just dispensing a month's supply of the profit of $700. Now you may be thinking, well, that's, too good to be true, or that's, why is it there's so much margin built in? Well, I don't know. But I supply my patients with wound care products not because I'm making money, but because I'm providing them the best product. I'm providing them the product right then and there, so they're getting the convenience. My compliance, so the compliance for use of this product is going to be significantly enhanced because we're showing them how to use it. We're giving them the product, all the things they need to use it. And yet instead of someone else making that annual profit or that profit, I'm making the profit. So again, there's nothing wrong with making a profit so long as your emphasis is on patient outcomes. So if you want your patients to heal faster, you're going to give them the right product. And it may not be a powder, it may not be a collagen, it may be a foam, it may be an algin, it may be something else. But I think the important thing is that if you are smart and if you want to provide that convenience and comprehensiveness to your patient, it doesn't make any sense to send this stuff out. Okay, so what about this? So I use foams, and so this is just an example. There's a lot of sizes of foams you can use. This is one of the larger size foams, the 4.25 times 4.25 non-bordered foam. Your cost for this piece of foam is around $2.92. Your reimbursement's $23 or $24 or $23.20. So you're looking at, for a month's supply, and by the way, foams, you can only dispense 12 per wound per month, not 30. Because foams are designed to be used for more than one treatment at a time. So they're designed to be used for up to 3 days or so, depending on the amount of drainage. But, if a month's supply or 12 units of this foam, you're going to look at a net reimbursement of $243. So again, there are these opportunities to do both, to really take care of people, to really provide them comprehensive, excellent care, and yet generate solid revenue. Now, I use wound care kits because it makes it simple, it makes it easy. And again, these come in 5-day kits, 15-day kits, which is a 2-week supply, and a month kit, a 30-day supply. And so again, this is going to be relatively simple, but this I think just hits home and hopefully makes the point I'm trying to make. And that is, you have one doctor that kind of practices very simplistically, maybe just doesn't get into the DME. You have to ask yourself, which is the best quality? Who's going to provide the best quality, consistency, and those types of scenarios? So did the patient receive the best wound care product, or are the patients going to get whatever the pharmacy had? For someone who is, who's dispensing the products themselves, they know the quality of the product. They know exactly what the patient is going to get because they're choosing that. And so studies show, and have showed over and over again, that when you provide the product to the patient and show them how to use it, your compliance is going to dramatically increase. And so, when you look at this, again, it's relatively self-explanatory. You got both these doctors, one that is a dispensing doctor, one that is or that isn't a dispensing doctor. They're both going to build the same E&M code. They're going to both build the same debridement code. But the difference is one's going to dispense a month's supply of a product, or the collagen kit, and the other one's going to send a prescription out somewhere to and hope the patient gets something soon. And look at the difference in the revenue opportunities. And again, this is not a lecture to show you how much money you can make. It's a lecture to demonstrate that quality, consistent, and convenient care can result in this type of reimbursement if you practice smart. So what do you need? What are the requirements? I'm going to review this quickly, but again, all of this will be available to you for a download, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. So number one, you need to document in every wound the length, width, and of course the depth. Now, I use a template to do that. A lot of my templates are going to be made available to you after this is over for free. You can download them. But you're going to document the characteristics of the wound, the presence of exudate. If you dispense a foam and you don't have any documentation that says that the wound's draining, you're not in compliance. And if you get audited, you won't win an audit if you don't have a description of the wound. When you dispense, you can dispense again. A number of different. So if you have two wounds, you have one wound on the leg and one wound on the foot. You can dispense, of course, the appropriate number for that wound because it's per wound per month. And you're going to use the A1 through A9 modifier to indicate the number of wounds the patient has. If it's just one, you're going to have A1. If it's two, A1, then you're going to have maybe collagen for that, collagen powder. A2, then you may have a foam for that wound. The place of service for these dressings always has to be place of service 12, which is home. So whatever you put on the patient in the office is non-reimbursable. So be mindful of that. You're going to have a standard written order. I'm going to show that to you in a minute. You're going to have to proof of delivery. Surgical dressings are not covered when dispensed to patients that have home health. So you have to be very careful. This is where doctors usually mess up or make a mistake of dispensing and not asking the question or not researching or not determining if the patient's in home health. If they are in home health, you're not allowed or you will not get reimbursed for wound care dressings. So just to be aware of that. So, what I do in some cases, if I determine that the patient's not capable of applying the dressings themselves and they need home health and they don't have it, I will supply a month's supply. I'll educate the patient how to use it or the family how to use it. And then I will call home health to come in and use my dressings to help the patient supply them or provide whatever services they need. That's totally appropriate, totally legal, and totally ethical. And again, we have great relationships with our home health agencies in that regard. So this is a standard written order. No reason to take pictures. You can download this. You can modify it in just a few minutes. This is the proof of delivery form. All these forms, again, are specific for the wound care products we talked about. But we want to make sure we educate our patients, make sure that we provide no more than a month's supply. Again, you're allowed for collagens to dispense up to 30 pieces or 30 grams per wound per month. That does not mean that I do a month's supply every time. In many cases, I will do a less than a month in that case. And so I would say probably on average, I use a 2-week supply as opposed to a 30-week supply. So again, you use your judgment in that regard. So we talked a lot about the need for compression. And I'm just going to highlight to you the fact that I use a number of products for that. And Dr. McGuire mentioned a couple of these. He mentioned Circade. I don't remember him mentioning Pharaohs, but Pharaoh is a product that if you don't use or if you're not familiar with that, I highly recommend that. And then there's a product that's called Extremity Ease. This is a product made by Amerix, and you can learn more about that later. But this is a zipper application with these bungee straps. So both of these have in common basically an added level of simplicity in applying. They both come with an undersock. They both meet the criteria for the A code A6545. So unfortunately, these types of dressings fall under the category of a wound care dressing, which doesn't make much sense to me. But these products are considered by Medicare as wound dressings. So the HCPCS goes A6545. What must you have? You must document a venous leg ulcer. And I'll touch on that, what that means and what that is in just a second. But the reimbursement's very good. You're looking at it, if you dispense a single pair, you're looking at a profit around $45. For a pair, you're looking at reimbursement maybe a little less than $100, and that's net profit. Okay, so here's the question. So what is a venous leg ulcer, a venous stasis ulcer? Because the LCDs, which I have right here on this next slide, which indicates very clearly that you have to document a venous stasis leg ulcer. So the question is who is going to put one of these very expensive garments right on top of an open venous stasis ulcer when no one has a brain? So what you're going to do in a case like this is that the picture to your right that shows the act open, you're going to treat that locally with either compression therapy like an Uniboot, maybe some Santil, maybe a collagen. that patient's not ready to go into one of those types of compression garments. You're going to use Una boots and other types of wraps. Now, you look at the picture to the right, and by all accounts, local wound care and compression have resulted in a for the most part healed wound. Yet this patient still has, by all definitions, an active open venous stasis ulcer. So what do I mean by that? So if the patient still has a break in the skin, if there's still an open portal of any size or any type, that, according to experts, and of course I've written an article on this several years ago, that by all accounts would account for or qualify as a venous leg ulcer. If a patient has no break in the skin and there's no evidence whatsoever of leaking or exudate emanating from the legs, well, clearly they do not meet the criteria to get one of those A6545 products. So, but this is the way I practice. I get that leg wound healed, and then I get them to the point where they're ready to go into a compression garment to finalize healing and to keep it healed. So the picture to your right, the one that shows the partially healed wound, is the one where I'm going to institute the compression garments. As I mentioned, when billing, you must document the presence of venous stasis ulcer, and you have to use the modifier AW when billing that A6545 code. All right, now I want to spend just a couple of minutes talking to you about probably the most essential thing that we do when it comes to managing our diabetic patients. Now, most of you know that several years ago, there was determination that we were now allowed to bill once a year a comprehensive diabetic exam on our diabetic patients. Usually that foot exam oftentimes opens opportunities for us to get them diabetic shoes, if indicated. In many cases, that opens the opportunity to order an ABI or order a vascular test. In some cases, it may open the opportunity to dispense a compression garment. In some cases, it may open the opportunity to dispense AFOs if they have a significant foot deformity. It may open the opportunity to do a prophylactic surgery on a capsular flexor release or something like that. But here's the thing. Unfortunately, studies continue to show that most foot and ankle physicians are not performing an annual CDFE on their patients. So not only is that lost revenue, because of course that you can bill a mid-level code for this visit, but you're also losing out on opportunities on all of those ancillaries I just mentioned. So if you are not performing a CDFE on your diabetic patients, I believe that falls below the standard of care, and you should be, because when you do a CDFE, you're identifying that risk level. You're identifying, again, whether you use what score you use. I use the LEAP score, the Lower Extremity Amputation Prevention score, and I use a system that enhances and enables me to really stratify my patients and do a thorough CDFE digitally and online using the ARCH healthcare system. And so when you talk about, why use a system like this, why do a CDFE? I don't care what you do to use it, but by using a good system and a good CDFE program, you're looking at not only increased income, but you're going to produce increased practice referrals, population performance, and metrics. And what's really valuable about this system that I love is that when my patients get my request or my certification letter for shoes, they're getting a really thorough report. And this is what the report looks like. So if you look at that picture to your left, and your family doctors are getting a really thorough report, including a scan of their foot. So if you want to learn more about this system, just take a picture with your phone on the scan, and you can go to a site to learn more about this system. But whether you use this system or any other system, whether you're just doing a CDFE on your own and really documenting thoroughly that risk once a year, that will open up a tremendous opportunity for you to better take care of your patients, and again, do a thorough evaluation that assesses their vascular status, need for footwear, need for surgery, need for vascular intervention, all those types of things. So again, if you want to learn more take a picture of this, and you can learn more later about that. So, what is this all about? It's really about making sure that we're enhancing the quality of care for these patients, getting the best outcomes, and you can do that and still produce phenomenal opportunities for revenue. And one of the ways I think you can do that is by attending a practice management conference. So what a better time to mention the upcoming practice management conference that's happening November. As a board member of the AAPPM, I am really thrilled with the opportunity to work with Rich with LER to enhance education, enhance opportunities for educating doctors and providing these opportunities for them. So really thrilled for that relationship. And as I promised, I want to give you this opportunity for free access to the templates, the documents, compliance forms. Just take a picture of this code, and I'll leave this up for just maybe a couple of minutes. I think I've got 2 minutes left to get free access to those templates, documents, compliance forms, and all those things. So again, if you want all those things to download for free, just take a picture of this and go to that site. And with that, really good to be with you. I hope this has been helpful. There's certainly a lot more I could have said, but I hope this has been a good start to enhance your diabetes management in the years to come. So thank you so much for this opportunity. Have a great day.
Awesome. Nice job, Dr. Moore. Appreciate it. You really gave a lot of really good information, practice management, products, the whole gamut. And what it boils down to is obviously providing the best patient care possible. So I really appreciate the lecture, appreciate working with you. I'm going to stop this stream. Anybody that had a question that is in the chat, I'll make sure that Dr. Moore gets those and is able to respond. So do not fret. We will also have the presentation available so you can look at it later. Dr. Moore, I'll talk to you soon, my friend.
All right. God bless. Take care.